Stream, and here we go. All right, so what do you guys think about that?
Ooh, awesome.
Pretty interesting, engaging. You guys recognize some of those companies, I imagine. So let me open my PowerPoint. Like all of you guys, well, let me just start out by saying the majority of this talk is going to be based around, oh shoot, where'd it go?
Kevin, where's this live streaming to?
It is live streaming to YouTube right now.
Yeah.
Um,
You got a URL.
And so, just my name, Kevin Coons. You can see the spelling right there. So today I'm mainly going to be talking about 360 camera rigs, how they affect your perspective, and I'll actually pass one around for you guys to take a look at. This is a little hat POV rig, and it actually has my name engraved on it, so no one better walk off with this. As you can see, this is the Theta M15. This is my first 360 camera, so it has a lot of sentimental value, hence why I engraved it. To give you guys some of my background, I also teach VR classes at Academy of Art University. Currently this semester we have 4 different VR courses, 2 intro classes which have about 20 students in them, a sports and VR class which we're doing with GoPro and using the GoPro Fusion with, and an advanced VR class which uses the Kodaks, and maybe next semester we're using the Insta360 Pro, which can do 8K res, 3D, 360 audio. So you can find out all about my classes at Academy of Art and sign up for them. Anyone can enroll, which is kind of a nice feature. Previous to this, like many of you, in another life, I was a documentary filmmaker. I did this movie called Mobilize, which you can find on Amazon. I interviewed the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak, Gavin Newsom. We won awards. We premiered at the Castro Theater. But then a couple years ago, I got really interested in this camera, the Theta M15. And you know, this camera at the time, 150 bucks, super cheap. And it just really got me engaged with 360 content and using it. And I started to do daily videos in 360 as a way of teaching myself, sort of engaging the community, getting feedback through the comments about what worked in the medium, what didn't work. Can I do handheld? Can I put it on the ground and hit tennis balls at it? And I really filmed like 365 days a year posting stuff. And it was really easy with this camera because it has its own stitching software. One thing that I got a lot of comments on, because it was, you know, I upgraded to the Theta S when it came out. I actually had 3 of them at one point in time. So I'm a huge Theta fan. I've had some of them break on me and brought them to the repair center in Enfield, Connecticut, like 2 days after Christmas, because I'm originally from the East Coast. But I really got really into it when I started using the Kodak cameras, which can do 4K res. I started to learn a lot more about stitching, because you actually have to take the 2 cameras and stitch them together. But what I love about both of these cameras is the fact that they're so portable. I could take them with me traveling, suction cup it to the outside, to a plane window, and get like a time lapse of a plane taking off. And then on the other side, it's me like eating all the crappy plane food. You can attach it to like a skateboard. I was just like attaching it to everything that I could. And because it's only 150 bucks, if it broke or something, I wouldn't feel that bad about it. It'd be like, okay, that shot was worth it. So I think on this one I broke one of them, or maybe my cat went over to and sniffed it and then it fell. It wasn't magic armed on there quite strong enough. After that, I really started to get into the higher end rigs, like these 7 GoPro rigs. Currently my favorite is the Zcam S1 because it does really good low light, and you can get really close to the camera in terms of the stitching. But one thing that I learned really early on is that perspective is everything in 360.
What's the price range for those guys?
So I wouldn't even recommend the GoPro rig anymore because you're literally having to power on all these different cameras. It's kind of a headache. Their new one is going to be coming out at $800, the Fusion, and it does pretty much what that one did and kind of what this one does.
Yeah.
This one can do up to 6K res. The new GoPro can only do 5.2K, so it's a little bit less in terms of the res. But that one is only using 2 lenses. This one has 4, and each one of these lenses is going to its own SD card, which means less compression happening. But really what I learned super early on is that perspective is everything in 360. For instance, those of you who are live streaming right now, if I get really close to the camera, you're going to feel that sense that it's almost uncomfortably close. However, when you're setting up for like a setup like this at a live thing, you want to be as close to the presenter as you can get. Because if I were to put the camera right next to you, everyone's going to be like, what's he doing? He's like on his cell phone. He's doing something, you know, and it's going to completely distract from the viewing. I learned this really early on because I had a client that was dog adoption centers. Who in here likes puppies? Yeah. So one thing that you might notice is if you were to film puppies from this angle, human eyes, how we see it, it's not really that engaging, right? I mean, it's cute, that one hopping up there, like trying to get at me. But I learned that you really got to get those dogs level in order to capture them. So having it at that low level really changes your perspective a lot. And it also taught me with these dogs that you capture the best spontaneous moments in 360. Going to a Hitchcock quote, everyone knows that saying that, you know, actors are cattle in a way. And in this case, it's like you can't really tell the dog, don't step in the stitch line, don't get too close to the camera. So in this particular case, we actually drew a circle in the sand and said, hey, keep your dogs away. We want to make sure everything will look good in post-production with stitching. Sure enough, this one dog had to break the rule. And it was when my back was turned. He went right up to the camera with his little wet nose, put it right on the lens. And we had a nice little smudge snot mark there. But that was the scene that the client said, whoa, this is really immersive. This feels so tactile. I said, we want that one clip. Sure enough, that's the one that went viral. I also learned a lot about partnerships with other companies with this. We did a team up with Kodak and this amazing dog adoption center, Wags and Walks. And so Kodak actually let us beta test. Oh no. Well, we'll just have that be paused for now. They let us test this great rig out that they were using. They had not even tried it yet, and you can clearly see we put the camera on the dog and took a little snaggletooth here for a little walk. And we specifically chose this dog because we knew he was an energetic puppy that was going to, you know, twirl around with the camera and break it right away. We knew he was old dog, chill. He's just going to walk around and like lay down. And so we put it on him, and we get this really amazing perspective, like as though you're a dog going on a dog walk. And if you look back the other way, you see his tail wagging, and it's just truly amazing. But it really taught me that eye level is important. You can see here, if you're lower angle, this guy, what happens to him? His legs get way extended, and his body becomes so short, and his head's really tiny. And in comparison, the cat, you can see, looks giant. Now, do you guys think that cat is as big as that guy? Is that like a lion-sized cat there? Mm-hmm. No, it's the perspective. So one thing that I learned really quick is you want to shoot at the eye level of whoever it is, whether it's Ayesha Curry here, or whether you're filming, you know, this guy with his kid feeding a goat. You want to be wherever your main subject's eye level is. Now you might have the question, well, what if I'm filming a crowd of people or a couple of people? You kind of want to take the average. You want to be in that middle zone, so that way no one looks too tall or too short. And in some cases, as the camera operator, you might need to take a knee. You can see here my buddy Brenton here, we're shooting the 49ers, and everyone here is kneeling except for the players and the cheerleaders. And if he said, no, I'm going to stand for this, it would be a really awkward shot because he'd be blocking one of the cheerleaders. But he also, oh no, slowly corrupting all of them. I'll force quit out of that one. But you can see here that clearly this guy's taking the knee too, but they decided to leave the camera at this perspective, because if they took the camera down to this cameraman's perspective, they would look like giants running by. And these are the 49ers. The Giants are another sports team. So, and in some cases you maybe want your person to look like a giant. In this case, we have a fire dancer. We want her to have this large, whose phone? You kind of want this person to have a larger presence in this situation. Give you guys an idea about past POV shots, how they were sort of captured. You'd have a camera rig attached to your actor, whoever it is, and you would film it through their perspective. In this case, John Malkovich. And in that case, it worked because it was really effective for that one scene where he's having this POV experience. It wasn't the whole movie. A whole movie where they pull this off is Enter the Void, if you guys have seen that, Gaspar Noé. It's really great, but it's not even the whole movie. It's most of the movie up until when the character dies, and then you're out of body, and you're sort of floating around without a body. Enter the Void. It's a very good movie. Or you have another example where the whole movie is done in POV, Hardcore Henry, but the reasoning is because you have all this action and the guy's beating people up and has, you know, pliers up people's noses and stuff. Traditionally, this is, you know, was done with bigger rigs. Now you have GoPros and whatnot. It's easy to attach them. It's so easy even a baby can do it, as that baby demonstrates there. With 360, it's a little bit more challenging. You can see here how many GoPros that guy has stuck on his helmet. Or here's an example of a more professional case with Radiant Images, where they have some of the lenses are much bigger. These Antonia lenses that were put on the GoPros to extend certain areas. With POV, it's one of those situations where people will actually look down where the tripod is because they want to see what the body of the person is and if their hands are doing things. In this case, the hands were shooting people. Suicide Squad was the client. And it's pretty awesome to see how they did this using specific rigging with the neck. Because the whole idea is that if you have a lot of motion where the person's looking around, and let's say you're in a headset moving like that too, it can be pretty impairing, right? So the whole idea is that character basically has to look forward the whole time, and it can create some weird situations in terms of the blocking that they ended up doing for it. And they also spent a lot of time doing CGI on the arms and things, because as things get closer to those stitch lines, you can imagine the stitch lines for 6 or 7 cameras, and you have hands right there kind of moving in all directions.
Was this actually presented as 360, or is this a way to...
This is, yeah, this was a 360 short. You can find it on YouTube,
okay.
Suicide Squad 360.
Okay,
Thanks. But in many cases, too many cameras can be bad, I think, as that guy kind of demonstrates with his head. But in some cases, maybe one camera isn't exactly key. This is Radiant Images guy, Andrew Schwartz, and he's got these massive fisheye lens in the front and one in the back there, LaCroix, product placement there. And you can see that would probably do a decent stitch job, maybe. I don't know if it would have enough room to be able to cover it. With the case of waterproof stuff, you can see what it was like a couple years ago. You'd have a guy with all those GoPros. Now it's gotten a little bit easier with these smaller cameras that are coming into play. This is the Nikon, which is completely waterproof up to a certain degree. Garmin is waterproof, GoPro's waterproof. Many, many cameras are entering that waterproof stage. But the whole idea is that the smaller they get, the easier it is to get closer to that POV perspective. As you can see here, I put one on a hat. That's the Kodaks going around. So you can obviously put bigger things on there, but the bigger the hat, the more it's going to weigh you down. You can see here doing, jump out of a plane with one of them. Certainly you feel very immersed in that POV perspective. And you can even do a cheap version where you just stick it in a mannequin, as we did up in Colorado one year. But it really makes you think in that case, what would be a downside of that specific scenario where you're in the body of a mannequin?
The mannequin can't walk.
Yeah, the mannequin's not moving their hands. It's pretty weird. It's kind of like, I feel like I'm in a paraplegic's body or something, right? So in that case scenario, I argued very much to the director, like, does this need to be POV? Like, why? Why POV? So I don't want you guys to get tricked into thinking that everything in 360 should be like that. Certain scenarios like this where you can move your hands around and you're actually in the body can be super helpful. In this case, they're doing a study where they put this white guy in the body of an African-American woman, and she's like getting harassed by a police officer, and it's supposed to build empathy. In some cases, they've done studies with sexuality, where you're in somebody else's body and vice versa. And you can use it to overcome fears and things. But I really want you guys to think, who's your audience for your piece? Is your audience going to be watching it in a headset? In some cases, they might not be. With this case, this was a guy who was in a wheelchair who came to a VR event I put on, and he wasn't able to move around and use a headset like that. So I was helping him out there doing that. But you got to think most of the videos that people are probably watching are on YouTube or on their phones or on an iPad or a desktop computer, and they're using their mouse. Or there are ways currently where you can do projection to large groups of people. I think this will be the future of VR in terms of how it's presented. Currently it's a little tricky. You have 6 or 7 projectors all tethered together. It can be extremely complicated to pull that off. But then again, the experience of having all of these people collectively watching a 360 VR video is kind of amazing. And it's, you can clearly look around and still use that whole movement of your head and body. Ultimately, I want you guys to ask yourself when you're working on this Tiny Planet competition. By the way, for those of you who just walked in, we're going to be giving away a Theta V camera today, along with our photo competition for Tiny Planet photos. So be thinking of that as we're going through this. So what are you really trying to accomplish with the photo? In this case, she's trying to get a group shot of us. I'm over there. We're both on these paddle boards. Didn't really work out too great because it was kind of too high up. But in some cases, if you use handheld shots, what do you see happens here? Yeah, a lot of the hand ends up taking up that framing of it. It kind of looks awkward, like I have a freakish hand. And in many cases, the stitch line will not be able to be fixed if you have your hand in the shot or doing it handheld. I often recommend if you try and do a shot like that, use a little tripod, extend it out, and you'll get a much better vantage point. Or, an even better idea is using something like this, a third-person perspective mount. So this has 7 GoPros in there, 6 GoPros in there, and you can see it's tethered to him with a Velcro belt and all these other attachments. Here's the original version of that. Who knows the name of this one?
That's Odyssey.
That's Google Maps.
Oh, wow.
So they used back in the day, and that's how he would be like, oh, here I am, GPS. But nowadays with this third-person perspective mount, which is made by Sale Video Systems for, I believe, $200, maybe less, you can get these really innovative shots. Like here's an example of one of the shots where we didn't take away the pole yet. You can see she's running with these guns. They just did a robbery. Here's an example where they actually removed out the pole. And you can see it's sort of like you're floating behind them. It's really, really cool shots, and you're starting to see it a lot more in 360. People are even doing this live, but it requires a lot of wires, which that guy's happy about, but I wouldn't be so happy about. But clearly there are some things to be aware of when using this. What would be a downside or a danger if you are going to wear a mount like this?
Lightning. Lightning.
Lightning, yeah, if you get struck by lightning. I'm thinking more about that giant post behind him, and if he turns his body like that slightly, then he smashes all those cameras. So it's something to be aware of if you are wearing a pole mount like that, or just general safety, if he's like running with it and then like falls and then impales himself, you know, those sort of things. But I'll tell you one thing, the big advantage of something like this, you might say, Kevin, why put a camera up beside him? Why not just have a dolly that follows him? Okay. Here are the current dollies that we deal with right now. This is a Mantis, and that has a jaunt camera on top of it. The jaunt camera is $100,000. How much do you guys think the motorized dolly underneath it is? For those of you who know the answer, don't say it.
35.
35,000. Okay, I'll take that. Anybody else?
10.
10.
Oh, wow.
Keep going up.
50.
50. Come on, who wants to win one of these? If you
100.
guess it on the key. 100,000. Keep going up.
250.
150,000.
Oh.
So that tripod dolly mount is actually worth more than the camera.
Wow.
And you can see there another shot of it. The main reason it's worth that much is because of this gimbal portion in the bottom, which has these weights that are basically spinning around constantly, so it will kind of fix any displacement from bumps in the road. You can see there Nokia Ozo used to be up there, and then they stopped selling that camera. It's a ghost. You can see here a better close-up shot of that rig, and in some cases if you add on these other components, like that's a Teradek, in order to do live streaming, it will end up costing you even more money. So things to be aware about. But you know, people have come up with other things like this Kodak, you know, RC car mount. And these things work up to a certain extent. What do you think is one of the downsides of operating something like that?
Noisy.
Noisy, yeah. But if I were, you know, yeah, there you go.
Turkey.
The wobble. Yeah, it's the wobble factor. As soon as you stop that car, it's going to go boop, boop, boop. Or it could even like fall over if you put a really weighted camera up on there. But one thing that I will mention with this is that the patching underneath it would be a whole lot easier than patching out that giant thing there. So I think it's slowly going to get smaller and smaller in terms of the dollies that people are using. But patching is a pain, but it's essential. Some of the reasons it's essential, Ben already went over. You can hide lots of different mics under there. You can see this person using like 1 million different microphones under it. You can hide lights under it. And with patching, you can also patch out a whole 180. Like let's say you wanted to light your subject. You can light them on one half of it and then do another shot where you don't have anything there. For instance, in this particular shot, we're lighting for something. What do you guys think we're lighting for here? You see, there's the camera. Here are all these giant lights set up. What do you think we're lighting for?
Like a stop motion or
Something tiny. Makeup. See there?
Mm.
Little makeup. And we even have paper wrapped around the camera to add bounce to the light. But yeah.
What is the 360-ness of that shot?
The 360-ness is they just wanted a really beautiful shot of that makeup. And
It's just in one.
in a 180
direction.
zone, and then the other side they patched in later.
They
But
put
they-
some other stuff back there.
They put like an exact same replica of what would be there. They had a shot before they put all the lights in there,
Right.
so that way they get multiple ones and they could just clean it up later.
Hmm.
Some other rigs that you may have seen or that you may see in the future are these kind, which are suction cup mount rigs. What would be one downside of using this particular one right here? Distance factor. Think about patching that out. You're very close to those legs. You might want to extend it further away from the camera or from the base of the mount. You can see here, if you don't do that, you end up with stitch lines. But it's one of those challenges when you're operating in a tight spot like this. I actually taught that guy how to use the camera and use that attachment in 15 minutes. He did it completely on his own because I wasn't allowed to go in the cockpit of this. I was filming the football game from below, so I got both shots and was able to cross-cut them. Unfortunately, like there's some controversy with the national anthem and this guy complaining about a player. Anyway.
Thought you were gonna say you taught him how to fly.
You know,
in
I
15
didn't teach him
minutes.
how to fly. But you know, another way that you might want to think about attaching it is instead of suction cup mounting it, you can use these sort of magic arm things, and you can have a camera sort of floating there. And you can attach cameras to anything, guys. I mean, really, the world is your seashell or your oyster. In this case, Eagle's point of view. When you use them, you can attach them to drones. Get beautiful shots like this. This is actually a huge achievement, I think, for 360 drones. This is a mount that Kodak made for the Solo 3DR, which is a Berkeley-based drone company. And basically, you get these amazing drone shots. And what it used to be is you'd use a rig like this, which is like 6 GoPros there, one on top, and you get beautiful shots. But again, what do you think happens when you're flying something with that type of weight disbalance in the bottom?
pendulum.
Yeah, you get a pendulum or a wobble effect, and it's just not great. So we ended up scrapping that shot, even though it came out beautiful. It was just like not really steady enough to work. And you'll see this a lot with people who are putting them there. And then the other factor is patching out the drone. One thing that I did is I teamed up with a 3D printer and designer in Israel, and we actually made legs and created a whole body to use for the Mavic drone. So I kind of took Kodak's idea with the 3DR, and I saw another drone was coming out that was a little bit better, a little bit smaller. I said, ooh, let's take that idea and do that same exact thing. And because of that, I'm now able to get shots like this by the Golden Gate Bridge where you have all this wind coming at you, but it's a lot more stabilized. Ultimately, I think they really should have done it like this, where you have the cameras going outward. Why do you guys think I would like the cameras outward versus like this?
Because you can see up and down without having to stack the cameras.
Sort of.
So you can see the better views of what most
Mhm.
people are going to be looking at.
Exactly. Most people are going to be scanning the whole area like this. And so if you have your stitch line right in that center zone, that's not going to be too good, right? You'd rather have your stitch line over here, and that would help it out, even if the cameras get further apart. Once you're in the air, you're further away from everything. This is with the 3DR and the Mavic. These would be even closer together. But I'm currently trying to persuade him to do that design. Maybe we can talk with him together with your YouTube following. Might help. But literally, people are putting cameras on birds and flying them around football stadiums. You can see here this Samsung, the cheap, less than $100 camera being put on this eagle. And they actually had to train this eagle to wear this harness thing. They did it several times before actually doing the shot live in a football stadium full of thousands of people. But you can imagine how cool that was. Here are examples of 360 cameras on top of 360 cameras. Why do you think people are doing this?
Live preview.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So that guy over there wants to see whether his actors are hitting their marks, saying their lines, but he can't be in the shot. So how does he do it? Live preview. He puts one camera on top of the other, lets them go. What about in this case scenario? What's going on there? Yep, that's exactly what's happening. So these cameras are both lined up, so that way you'll have 3D optimization. You need 2 lenses for that on each of your areas, and that's exactly what they're thinking. They did it very sketchy, by the way. I'm not sure if you noticed. That's duct tape, and that camera is like around $2,000. So yeah, I would never do that. Maybe I would. Why do you think he did this? This is just shits and giggles. There's no real reason for him doing this
To show
except to show, oh look, I can attach them all. But you know, maybe he wants to record another one that is a live preview, or another one that's more about 3D, or just testing the different resolutions. And on that note, I will end my presentation with a shameless plug for my YouTube channel. You guys can check it out there. I put up a daily video in 360. Some of them are live streaming, like this one today. And there is my name, so you can find it online. So yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and guys, Kevin is a local to you, so definitely look him up and work with him, because he's an absolute professional, and look at all this cool shit that he's doing. I would love to live in the same neighborhood as Kevin, because we would probably end up in jail for some of the things where we try. So definitely follow him and stay in touch with him, because he's like one step ahead even of me. So he's an excellent person to kind of be following and keeping in touch with.
Thank you. That's very kind. I like those sweet compliments. All right, and on that note, I'm ending my live stream. Please subscribe, and also check out Ben's channel,
Yeah,
Life in
you better.
360. We can't live stream his. It's exclusive.
Yeah.
It's exclusive to you guys. Bye-bye. Oh, and there's Alex.